All right, we are live. Let's copy this link, share it in the group. I'm on Maui. Live right now. Live from Maui. Post that up. If you're joining us, let us know. Oops, did you sail? Did you sail? How was it? Hey, Dom Dom. All right, let's pop this up a little bit bigger. Dom Dom, have you been on the water? Nice. What were you working on? Axel, how's it going? Let's change this font. What font do we like? I don't know which font we like. I like Din. Let's do Din. It's a little bit bigger. All right, so Dom Dom still working on the back loop, but didn't commit full on stalled forward. Only medium ones, a bit scared. Sounds solid. How is the back loop progress? About wave riding, I felt my quad fin set up a bit too big. Too much drive on the bottom turns, maybe hips not parallel to the board. 8 and 14. That sounds okay. I'm not sure. Thomas. Cool, Dom Dom. Rock and roll floater. That sounds really fun. How did it go? I want to hear the process. Dennis. I've got to respond to your email. You wrote me an email about your GoPro footage, which I've got to respond to. I've just been so busy traveling. Good to hear you had a session on Wednesday. Cool. 2 meters. Good period. That sounds fun. Whoa, John, 21K run. That's almost a marathon? Oh, it's a bit less than a marathon. What's a marathon? A marathon's 26 miles, is that right? Or is it 26 kilometers? I'm not sure. But that sounds awesome. Mert, how's it going? What's up? I'm in Maui. That's what's up. Came here. When did I come here? A couple days ago. It's such a long, crazy trip. We had to lay over in San Francisco, and Hawaii doesn't recognize the European COVID vaccine, so I had to then do COVID tests around the airport in San Francisco, and was a bit of a mission. The kids are super jet lagged, so like 2 a.m. they wake up, and so even if my wife and I have our own jet lag kind of sorted, the kids are making that process quite a bit harder. I'll say a few things about traveling and windsurfing and jet lag and windsurfing that I think are relevant. Mario, good to hear you had a down the line session. All right, John. Nice, half marathon. Okay, that's good to know. Carl, evening, morning, how's it going? Thomas is also on the water with a 3-4, a bit overpowered, bump and jump. Try to do some backside air, but it's not super easy. Yeah, cool. That sounds like good work to do. Yeah, so what I wanted to say about traveling and jet lag and windsurfing is that when you travel really far, for example, to Maui from Europe, which is a 12-hour time difference, it's about 30 hours of traveling, and that's really hard on the body. And even if you don't realize it, your body is suffering from that, your body and your brain. And so you have to respect that. And even if you don't necessarily feel like it. And so I think it's really important not to go too hard. I'll always remember a trip I did where I came back to Maui and it was really firing the next day. And I spent a lot of time on the water at Hokipa, really good conditions at Hokipa. And then I was in bed for a week after that because it just destroyed me. It just destroyed my body. And there's really good science as well about the effects of jet lag on the brain and body and on athletic performance. You see it in athletes, teams that travel and are jet lagged do worse than teams who are not jet lagged in organized sports. There's a guy that I don't follow as much as I'd like to, John Huberman, and he has a podcast called I think it's the Huberman Labs podcast. And in some of his early episodes, he talks a lot about jet lag and sleep and the effect on performance. I recommend checking that out, all of his stuff. I mean, it's really dense. I really like his podcast. They're really dense, so I go through them so slowly, so I'm way behind. But anyway, my point is, putting it into practice for me here on Maui is I don't go really hard the first few days. I make sure I get in the water because I think it's really important not to delay that, and I don't want to, right? I'm so happy to be home and to be able to get on the water. But it's important to take it easy, to get into the conditions. I sailed an hour the first day, 2 hours yesterday, which was my second day, and not going too hard, not pushing myself too hard, not putting too much pressure on myself, and really being mindful of my body and getting back in shape, and getting back in shape not just because I haven't been here, but also from the travel. You know, one of my good friends from the World Tour, Jagger Stone, who is an amazing windsurfer, is one of my favorite windsurfers of all time in the waves. And after doing a long trip coming back to Australia where he's from, he did a speed loop and he really badly hurt his ankle. I think it was the tendons or maybe it was the ligaments snapped. And, you know, he's one of the best windsurfers of now, and he can do forwards in his sleep. But, you know, the body, you've got to respect the strain on your body. So if you're doing a long trip, whether it's to Cape Town or whether it's to Hawaii or somewhere else, I mean, Cape Town, there's no time difference, so you don't have like time jet lag, but you still have the travel fatigue. And, you know, the airplane cabins, the air is dry. So if you're doing long traveling like this, it's really important to respect the effect that it has on your body and take it easy the first few sessions. Make sure you hydrate really well. Make sure you're stretching really well. I think it's really, really important whenever you do a long plane journey for windsurfing. So anyway, that's my little spiel. Hey, Benoit. Nice to hear you had an okay session. Sorry you picked the wrong board. What was wrong about the board? I've also been kind of on a wrong board the last few days on Maui. I've been trying some of the boards that I've had from the last year or two that I didn't really like, and I'm trying to figure them out because I haven't really been able to get new boards. Normally I'm always experimenting, hey Max, with different boards, and because of COVID, it's made it really difficult to get prototypes from Fabian, my shaper. And so I've been going back to some of the old boards that I didn't like as much and trying to play with them and see if I can like them. And it's always interesting to try something different, to get out of your comfort zone. Hey, Sammy. All right, so we've got a good crew here today, and we've got some good topics in the group. I'm going to start going through it. Yeah, small board telling you that the diet season has started. I know that feeling. I've been riding bigger boards. I was always on 82s, and then after my knee injury, I gained some weight. Part of that was from not moving and like kind of a bit of fat, but then otherwise it was in my recovery, I did all this like leg and glute training, and so I've got, I don't know, an extra 5 kilos of muscles in my butt and legs, and so I've been more on 88s. Nice, Greg. Good to see you. Good to hear you had a good session. All right, let's start going through some of the questions. If you're just joining us, let me know how your session was. Did you sail? How was it? It looks like I'm going to be sailing every day. It looks windy as far as I can see on the Maui forecast. So if you guys want specific videos or questions about specific moves or whatever, this is a great opportunity for me to get footage and to film for instruction. So if you have requests, put the requests in the group rather than this YouTube chat. I mean, put it in the YouTube chat and put it in the group. Put it everywhere. It's nice to see it now for everyone. It might spark ideas. But yeah, so if you want something filmed, it can be something small like, I don't know, tacking in the swell or getting over whitewaters, or something more complicated as well. And I can work on getting some footage to talk about it. All right, getting into the posts in the group. So we've got a lot of the team at the Tyree Wave Classic. Nice to see. Looks like most of the team is in the bottom bracket here. But really good luck to Chris, Tomas, and Rory. Yeah, I've had some requests to talk about competition coaching. And I know that this doesn't apply to everyone, but I think that the principles of competition coaching the principles of good sailing in a competition setting can be applied to free sailing as well and make you a better free sailor. So it's not totally useless. So I want to say a few things about competition. Hey, Caroline, good to see you. And yes, Max and Caroline, I figured out something about tacking. I've got my standard way of teaching tacking, but I figured out something about tacking yesterday, actually, that I want to share. But anyway, just a quick few things about competition. For wave sailing competition, where you're being judged on wave riding, and especially where it's maybe more wave riding than jumping, different spots will have a different ratio of waves to jumps counting, right? So in Pozo, sometimes we have 3 jumps and 2 waves counting. Sometimes on Maui, we just have 2 waves counting and no jumps. And so those are really different kinds of heats that you're sailing and competing in. If you're doing jumps, one general rule is you want to do the jumps first, because when you're wave riding, you're often going downwind, you're getting out of position for the jumps. And so it's quite good to do your 1 or 2 jumps in the beginning, in the first minute or 2, and then focus on the waves. And then you can always try and get another jump to improve your score if the opportunity presents itself, but then at least you have something on the scorecard. It's really important just to fill out your scorecard. Make sure you've got your 2 jumps and your 2 waves. Like, just filling it out is important. So for the jumps, again, you want to get them in early if jumps are counting. That's pretty straightforward. About the actual wave riding, I think the strategy becomes less straightforward, and it's so much about wave selection. So world titles are won on wave selection, pretty much. Bigger waves score more from the get-go. Bigger, longer waves offer more opportunity to do moves. So a smaller wave, not only is it going to score less because it's smaller, it might only offer 1 or 2 turns, whereas the bigger wave will offer maybe 3 turns or 4 turns, and those turns will be more dynamic. And so you just have so much more scoring opportunity. Not every wave has the same potential. So, a lot of waves, maybe the potential is a 7, and some waves the potential is a 10. And so if you're catching the waves that have the 10 potential, and even if you're not riding them amazing, but you're just getting in some stuff and you get your 7s and 8s, that's enough to win most heats. So really, it's really about wave selection and being selective, right? Selection means being selective. So that means not catching a lot of waves. I don't know how the Tyree Wave Classic is being scored, but generally in a wave competition, it's just 2 waves to count. And so you don't need to catch 10 waves, right? And be selective. So you want to sit out the back, be strategic with your positioning, how you're catching waves, where you're catching waves, making sure that you're catching the waves that offer the most scoring potential and not catching waves that don't, and being disciplined to not go in and out, in and out, in and out, riding a lot of waves. Wait on the outside, wait on the outside. Sometimes this can bite you, but that's pretty rare. I mean, this is the strategy that will win you the most heats. And, like in the Aloha Classic, the last one we did, I think I finished 9th or something like that. And, I had the highest wave scores from every heat that I competed in, even the one that I finally lost in. And I had the highest wave score, and I couldn't get a second wave because I was just waiting for it. And the whole day, the the sets were coming in like about every 5 minutes. And so I had a set in the beginning, and I was just waiting and waiting and waiting for another set that never came. And so even if I just had, I think, like a 3 or a 4, I would have passed the heat. But I had the highest score of the heat. And so that's an example of the strategy not working. But that's the exception to the rule. Generally, it really pays to be selective and to make sure that you're getting the best 2 waves of that 10 minutes, 12 minutes, 15 minutes, however long the heat is. All right, we got a question from Sammy, and then I'm going to get into the next principle of competitive wave sailing. As a pro, do you adjust your moves depending on your competitors and stay on the safe side, or do you go 150% crazy from the beginning? Great question, and it actually leads into the next principle of competition, which is that the time to learn is not in the competition, it's before the competition. Right? So it's not about doing crazy stuff, new stuff in the heat. It's about just doing what you always do and putting together what you've been working on up until that event. And so what you see with a lot of people who are new to competition is that they try to go really crazy. They're going for double forwards even though they've only landed one in their life, or they're going for goiters even though they've never landed one, but they've been rotating them and getting close. And one time out of 1,000, maybe that pays off, but most of the time it's like a sure recipe to losing the heat. And I've seen guys, who was it? It was the Swedish sailor, Marcus Rydberg on Maui once. Really kind of crazy conditions, and at Hokipa, and he had a kind of a decent wave. I think he had a 5, and the other sailors in the heat were really struggling because the conditions were so tricky. And it's like the last 2 minutes of the heat, which means this is going to be his last wave because it takes too long to get back out again. And if he just did just some basic turns, like no risk at all, he would have won the heat. And he went for a goiter, and I've never seen him land a goiter in his life. I don't think he's ever landed one in his life. And so he fell and he lost the heat, and he would have won the heat if he just done some basic turns. And so that is the scenario that plays out 999 times. I can't even think of a 1 in 1,000 time where someone has really gone crazy and it's paid off. I'm sure it's happened. But generally, you want to just stick to what you know how to do. And it's not a time to learn. That's what training is for. Training is for learning. And so that also takes the pressure off, right? So you just go out and you just do what you know how to do. It's not about learning. It's not about going crazy. And there are some heats where, okay, in order to win this heat, I've really got to be on my top game. But again, it's not about doing anything more than what you already know how to do. Things can be different maybe at the end of the heat. Like I've had some heats where, I've seen my competitors landing some tricks, and it's like, okay, I've got to, like, those are for sure 8s. I've got to step it up and get higher scores. But generally it's just about doing what you know how to do. I think super sessions are different. So, I've had some tricks, some of the super sessions that I've won. I won one at the World Cup in Cabo Verde doing a taka at Punta Preta, and it was the first one I ever did there. Before that, people said it was impossible. But a super session is a different competitive environment where it's okay to fall. You have a longer period of time, and it's just about that one move, that one big move. So a super session, expression session is a very different format. Also, the one that I won in the Aloha Classic with that one-handed taka, that I'd done those before, but that was also I was definitely pushing. But again, that's a different format. So with a general windsurfing wave competition format, you don't go crazy. It's not about learning new things. It's not about trying things that you don't know how to do. It's about just digging deep and putting everything out that you've been working on over the last year or your lifetime, whatever, however long you've been windsurfing or really focusing on improving your wave riding. And so it's not about doing new. It's not about pushing. It's not about going crazy. And that doesn't mean that you play it 100% safe. It means that you do what you normally do, and you're not trying to do something different. And I think that is one of the most difficult tenets of competition. Yeah, so Mario's making a good point about the pressure, um, about how you have great sailors who then feel the pressure in the competition and then underperform. And this happens a lot, and this happens in other sports as well, right? The choking and the mental side. And so again, the most important thing to do well in competition is to be able to sail in competition as you can in your free sailing. And it's really hard to do. I've had instances of that. It's not something that I can do consistently. Some of the best competitive windsurfers can do that. It's really hard to get that. But again, it's to the point that you're not trying to go beyond what you can do. You're just trying to do what you can do. And so it's never about going 150%. It's try to get that 90, 100% that you would normally have on the water. And then often, if you try to go above that, you're just crashing. Or sometimes you're at 50% because of the nerves. And which brings me to one of the third principles, which is that breathing is really important. It's really important to focus on your breath. Keep breathing, keep breathing, keep breathing. Dealing with the mental side is something that is a huge challenge. I mean, I think if we look at these three principles, the first three I think are the most important, which is catch just the two best waves of the heat. Just focus on doing what you can do. So you're not trying to overextend. You're not trying to learn anything new. You're not trying to do something you've never done before. You just go out there and you do what you've always done. And look, if what you've always done is not good enough, that's fine. But you're not going to learn something new in that 15 minutes under all that pressure. And then focus on the breathing. And those will get you mostly there. And then trying to, like Mario points out, deal with the mental side, that can be, depending on the person, that can be a longer and longer process. Something that was really important for me was realizing that no event actually really matters. And so this is different, I guess, if you're just doing one event a year or whatever, but like I'm doing a lot of World Cups a year and a lot of years of World Cups. So I mean, it's the accumulation of events, accumulation of heats. And then it was also important for me to realize, and again, I'm not an expert at this. It's still really difficult for me to sail as well in the competition as I do free sailing. I've only had instances where that's true. But realizing that it's not a judgment thing, because I think a lot of the pressure comes from the judgment on yourself and being too hard on yourself about, if you're a good sailor, then it means that you're a good person, or the people will like you less or more depending on how you sail, or your self-worth is somehow tied up in how you do and this performance and whatever. And all that stuff gets, pretty tricky mentally. One of the things that I've seen with the best competitors, so Victor Fernandez, Kevin Pritchard, is they really don't get emotional about it. So even when they lose, they're not throwing a tantrum and really pissed. Like I've seen guys like, Branzino or Ricardo, who are amazing windsurfers and have moments where they're competing really well, but also have moments where they choke and they can't, and they're ones who get really upset when they lose. And I think that it's related. I think it's related. I consistently see the best competitors, they have this really even emotional response, whether they win or lose. And of course, everyone's hungry to win, but not letting it detract from your self-worth. Max, I will be in France. Yeah, I'll be competing in that World Cup. It's weird after 2 years of not really competing. We'll see, but I'll get into it. All right, we've got this nice back loop from Owen. I think we looked at this last week, didn't we? This was posted while we were streaming, I think. But it's nice, so we can watch it again in slow-mo. Right on, Owen. All right, moving on. We've got some training, some dry land wind skate training from Axel doing a duck jibe into a carving 360. I don't know what that's called. It might be a name. Claudius, Caro's boyfriend, is really into all of these different tricks and their names. So he might be a good one to ask if he's in the chat. I'm not sure. But it looks cool. All right. Great question here from Yaram. I hope I'm saying that right. Any ideas to stop over-rotating a back loop? So there are some great comments here. One of the biggest mistakes with the back loop is over-rotating it. And one of the beautiful things about analyzing windsurfing is it's so complex. There's so many different components. And how you explain something or understand a move or a movement can be different person to person, and they're all correct, and it can click differently with different people. And that's one of the things I really love about reading these comments, because they're all saying somewhat different things, and I think they're all more or less correct. And so it's whatever ones click and work with you. The thing that I always say is if you're over rotating the back loop, generally it means you're rotating with your body rather than with your head. And that will cause you to either under or over rotate, and you get these kind of whippy rotations. And the back loop is really not a whippy move. You don't accelerate. You really just, you go up and you fall down, and you're not rotating very much. You're rotating less than 180 degrees sometimes. It's really not a dramatic rotation. You know, you're rotating somewhere between 90 and 180 degrees on the back loop. It's really, you go up and you just fall down the other way. So if you're whipping it around with your body, you're going to over rotate. And so really guiding that rotation from the head and the shoulders rather than from the hips is what helps me to understand the back loop rotation. There's a few different interpretations that are all somewhat similar, because I think the sort of core principle is the same, but there are different ways of understanding that movement, and some of these I really love. I'm going to go through them. So Alex says, at the apex, slide the sail across your body towards the wind as you look over your shoulder. Don't sheet out at this point. So what Alex is saying, I think, is really true, which is pushing the sail forward towards the nose of the board. It's something we've talked about before on the stream, getting this windshield wiper motion with the hands. So you're pushing the sail forward towards the nose of the board as you're looking over with your head. So pushing it towards the nose of the board, bringing everything forward, and really sheeting in. When you're sheeting in, it's similar to like a forward movement where you're pulling the nose downwind, which is counter to the upwind rotation. And so those forces counteract each other, which means that you stop. And so the more you're sheeting in, the less you're rotating as you're coming down on the back loop. And as you're sheeting out, it's kind of like a push loop, and you're continuing that rotation upwind, which can lead you to over rotate. So sheeting in when you come down is really important. And I notice when it's really windy, there's a tendency not to pull in as hard, not to sheet in as hard. And then that leads you to over rotate. And actually things are so much easier when you are sheeting in. Something that people say is, you know, if you really get that wide grip, so you put your hand back at the top of the back loop, and that can help you to sheet in. And again, that's doing the somewhat of the same thing. David says, I think it's sheeting out at the top. Need to say sheeting in and tucked up. Yep. So sheeting in again is important, and pushing that sail forward. Andy says to try push loops, which can or cannot be a good way to go. I think for some people, yes, it's like skip the back loop, just go to push loops. But I think there is also a lot, it's hard, but there's a lot of value in sticking with it and learning how to do the back loop. Thomas says to stop throwing the head and shoulders. I'm not sure if I agree with that. I think you really do want to throw the head and shoulders rather than your hips. You can throw your head and shoulders a ton and not over rotate. And you can keep your head and shoulders really tucked in, but if you're rotating with your hips, you're going to over rotate. And in fact, most of the times people are over rotating, they're not throwing their head. Their head is looking forward, and they're like forcing it around with their hips, with their lower body. And That's why they're over rotating. Great answer from Marius here. I really love this. Marius was working on our Denmark masterclass, and he's a great windsurfer himself. And this is cool. So this again is a different interpretation of a lot of things that we talk about in the back loop, right? So we've been talking about the hands going forward and back, and he breaks it down. He's saying it's about the mast, where the mast is. So he's saying if the mast is back, then you're rotating, and if you put the mast forward, the rotation stops. And I think that's a pretty cool way to think about it. So you're steering with the mast, so you put the mast back, and then you're putting the mast forward, and that's similar to what we're saying with like this kind of windshield wiper with the hands. But it's a different way to think about it, and it's definitely correct. And so maybe try thinking about steering with the mast and really pushing the mast forward to stop the rotation, and steering where you're going by using the mast. I think this is a really interesting answer to the question, and it provides a little bit of a different perspective to some of the same concepts that we've been talking about. So thank you, Marius. And for everyone that's working on back loops, I think this is a really interesting little thread. All right, Tom did this post back in March about how to film both tacks. Why does this come up again? It came up again because I don't know why. I guess there's a recent comment, but I don't see it. If you commented on it, let me know, and we can discuss it. Cool. And Greg posted this wave riding at home, and so it looks like he's wave riding both ways. Oh, I didn't want this full screen. I just want this bigger. There we go. Can you guys see that? I think you can see it. So here, this is the goofy perspective, right foot forward, with the K4 harness mount. I really like this. So this is an example of the corner section that I'm telling you guys to look for, because this section is easy to identify for the timing, right? Greg is coming high on the whitewater. He's not turning on the bottom of the whitewater. We can see that the board is angled to pick up the energy. He's getting that high five that we're always talking about. And you can see he's picking up the speed from the whitewater and continuing on. Something else that I want to point out here is bringing the sail across the body. You know, we're talking about getting that S in your arm that we see here, which sets you up for the cutback. The only thing that I want to see different, Greg, is it looks like at this point here you start pulling on the sail. You're pulling yourself towards the sail. I want you to be hanging from the sail and really push it, keeping the pressure on the board. So when you pull up on the sail, then you're releasing pressure on the board, and you lose speed actually, even though you're kind of shooting in, because you disconnect from the wave. So great. I love this entry, this moment, all of this. Do more of that. Only thing I want to see is just a little bit more leaning down instead of getting this pull. Let that wave keep pushing you. But this is solid. Do more of that. All right, now we've got some wave riding on the other tack, on the natural stance side, left foot forward. It's a little bit more onshore, it looks like, with this wind angle. So in this kind of condition, like this exact setup, it might be more worthwhile to do some backside riding and really work on getting some backside carves, backside high fives. And so this section here looks like a good place to do a backside high five. And it looks pretty difficult for going frontside. One, it's super onshore, and two, there's really not much of a wave here. So that's my advice for that clip. Moving on to the next one. Little backside to start the ride. And then don't really make the section. Again, this is a lot more onshore than the video clip that we saw earlier, which I think makes it, or definitely makes it, a lot harder. And so it's hard for me to see just from this video, but it might be that the wind is just too onshore to really do the kind of frontside riding that you want to do on this day. And then in which case it's better to focus just on the backside riding. Again, it's hard to see from just this clip, but I can tell that it's super, super, super onshore, which is going to make it difficult for sure. So we've got a tip from Eric, which I want to get into. I was given a tip this summer to move my backhand further down the boom when doing the switch stance clue first bottom turn. It was helpful. It has helped me tremendously. From the video, it doesn't seem like you're moving your backhand much. Maybe try that and see if it makes a difference. I think that's a good tip. So you can move both hands back, actually. So you can move this front hand sort of closer to the harness lines and then move this hand farther back. Will give you more control over the sail. Also, what we are talking about often with the hips. So you can see here that your hips are pointing towards the nose of the board. You want to get those more pointing over your toes, so they're pointing like to where my mouse is here, which will just help you with your turn. But it might be that it's just too onshore to do this kind of riding, in which case you're better off focusing on linking some backside turns, really getting some good backside high fives, and doing some really dynamic backside cutbacks. Try and get the rail engaged, try and really slam that board on the backside. Right, this section you could really slam it going backside. The other thing, one other point. So I think the hands, Eric, good tip. Move these hands back. Hips, always relevant. The hips are always relevant in the bottom turn. And the third comment, and Greg, I know this is kind of difficult, right? We're throwing in a lot of different tips. So pick one or two of them, something you feel like you can implement, whether it's the hands, whether it's the hips, or whether it's the next thing I'm going to say, which is that you don't want to be pulling the sail into you like this, especially when it's onshore. You really want to be pushing the sail away from your body and really opened up. So you don't want to be so close to the sail. So here you start to open up. But the sail is still quite close to you. You want to get the sail away from you sooner. So you can really push that sail forward and sheet out early, which gives you more space to then lean your body forward to get on the rail, and also puts the sail in a better position for that clue first riding, because the sail needs to be somewhat upright for that kind of clue first sailing. And if you're leaning then with your body and the sail's close to you, then the sail is going to be in the wrong position. So you want to kind of keep the sail up and flying in the right position to go clue first, and then you can lean your body to get the board on the rail. Again, these are difficult, definitely difficult conditions. I wonder if I can find, let me see, wave ride, if there's something from Silt or somewhere where it's just straight on shore. And we can look at, I have no idea what this clip is that I'm going to load here. So you guys should be able to see this, right? Let me know if the quality is not good enough. I was just searching for Silt because often Silt is almost straight on shore, very similar to the video that you posted, Greg, and so that's why I hunted this down. And so just to give an example of the bottom turning, so look at how he's pushing the sail away from him. I don't know if you can see that super clearly. So the sail stays really upright, and so his arms are pretty much extended and the sail stays kind of a lot in the same place while the body is leaning forward. So really see, like, look, everything is really extended going into this. These are such difficult conditions to ride. I like competing here when it's like this. Let's try and find one more wave. Just to show another example of it. So this is a different kind of turn, and doesn't really work for him. Anyway, the point is that you really want to push the sail away from you. You don't want to be hugging the sail close to your body in really any bottom turn, but especially when it's onshore like this. So like here again, you can really see how he's just pushing the sail in front of him. So you can see, look, he's just pushing the sail, and then he's leaning forward. That allows him to lean forward, but he's really just pushing the sail away from him. Like, look at how much he's pushing the sail, and then that gives him the space to lean forward, and it puts the sail in this kind of upright position that allows it to go clew first. We might see one more. Oh, did he make it? No. All right, so Greg, sounds like you've got some good work to do. All right, going through. We already answered this question. Martin posted his wing foiling sails. Oops, I clicked the wrong thing. All right, I lost our place. We've got to scroll down through here again. All right, where were we? All right, so we just talked about that. We already talked about this. Yep, Martin posted his foiling sails, super cool. John posted this clip of some of the guys from Maui going over to the North Shore of Oahu for windsurfing, which is cool to watch. It's cool to see somewhere new. Anya does a post looking for people who want to go on a trip together end of January, February. It's a good spot. South Africa. I think there's a lot of us going to South Africa this year. I was not planning to, but it looks like now I am planning to. Which I think I'll do some coaching there too. I've got to work out the details. It's been so crazy the last 4 weeks. Now I'm on Maui and getting over the jet lag, and I need to plan my South Africa trip if it's happening, which I think it is. I think it's like 99 or 95% sure it's happening, and also to do coaching down there. So I think there's already a good crew of people interested, but if you are interested, let me know. All right, Matt asks about Impact Fest, which we talked about this last week. Marine got the backwind wave riding. Love to see it. So this is one of the exercises that I go through on the master classes, and it is way harder than it looks, and it's really important for being a complete sailor. It helps your tacks, helps your wave awareness. It's something you can do to help get upwind, and it's just a cool thing to do. It forces you to learn a lot about your sail, board, balance, wave awareness. It's just a great exercise to do. So she's riding this with the wind is coming from the other side. So she's on the other side of the sail. So this is great to see. I always ask the people to do this exercise. And we're dealing with a lot of really good sailors from a lot of different backgrounds, and it's always funny because people don't like it because they feel like a beginner again. But that's what learning is feeling like a beginner again. So This is a great exercise. I recommend trying it. Marine, congrats. Great job keeping up the work of working on this and getting it down. All right. I think we're all caught up. Oh, we've got one more question. I don't think we talked about this from Bay. He can do stalled forwards okay, but for some reason, every time I'm way overpowered in survival mode, I can't get them to work anymore. I asked Mussolini for some tips, because he definitely does them in the group. Hasn't responded yet. Let's ask him again. Alex is decent. So, overpowered stalled forwards are hard and scary. That's for sure. I'm not really comfortable doing them in all conditions. I feel more comfortable doing overpowered tabletop forwards. For whatever reason, something about the way the rotation is, I feel like I can get kind of locked up in that tabletop position, and then I can control more when I'm going to sheet in, and I don't have that feeling of going up and then coming over the gear, which I think is kind of scary when you're overpowered. But I think you're not alone. I think most sailors, pro sailors, don't feel comfortable doing big stalled forwards when they're overpowered. Like I said, I feel more comfortable doing the tabletop forwards when it's really windy like that. So that, if you can do stalled forwards, tabletop forwards are not too difficult. So it might be worth trying those. Otherwise, there are a lot of good lessons from trying to do things overpowered. And one of the heuristics is it's harder to get the motions right. So oftentimes you don't sheet in enough, or you don't put the sail forward enough because you're pulling back against the sail and it's hard to sheet in. But the trick is, when it's overpowered like that, you have to really exaggerate those motions to really sheet in even more, push the sail forward even more, whether it's a bottom turn, whether it's stalled forward, no matter what it is, a back loop. It's really exaggerating those motions because they're harder to complete when it's so windy, which is one reason that I don't recommend people learn the forward loop when they're overpowered, because then the tendency often is to not sheet in enough. You have to really crank it in when it's overpowered to get enough sheeted in for the rotation to be sideways. So a general rule when you're overpowered for stalled forwards or any kind of move, you really want to make sure that you're completing the movements enough. And in order to do that, it helps to really exaggerate them, to feel like you're really exaggerating the motion. And then specific to you, Bay, stalled forwards when it's really windy and you're overpowered are hard. Give tabletop forwards a try. Do you know where to start on them? If you don't know where to start, let me know, and I'll give you some pointers. Maybe I can film something. I'm more comfortable doing them with wind from the left, which is not Maui wind. But yeah, I for some reason I find them a lot more comfortable when it's really windy. All right, we talked about this from Ragnar. I think we're all caught up. That was a great live stream. We had a lot of different topics. Again, I'm on Maui. It's going to be windy every day. So if you want something filmed, if you want some instruction, I saw some stuff about tacks, which, by the way, I figured out something about tacks yesterday on the water. Since I started doing this coaching, I've tried to be so aware of micro movements and things that I'm doing so that I can then share it with you and help whatever it is that you're working on. What I realized with the tacks is that it's really helpful to turn the hips. Again, hips, so many things come down to hands, head, and hips when we're analyzing moves. Anyway, so with the hips, to really turn the hips, really exaggerate the twist of the hips upwind as you're going into the tack. And that's doing two things. One, it helps you drive more into the wind, which is what you want when you're going to the tack. And two, it loads up the spring so that when you then go around the mast, which is then the other way, you can do a really explosive movement, right? It's sort of the wind up, so that when you go around, you can do it with power. And so that might seem a little bit counterintuitive at first, because it seems like you can, or you want to, have the hips already turning in the direction that you're going, because then you have less to turn with your body. But actually having the hips faced into the wind, winding up, so that then you can do a more explosive turn around the mast, is really beneficial. All right, I'm going to make some notes. You guys are asking for, so we've got some tack videos, crossing high whitewaters. John asked, yes, that is great. All right, Benoit says, you can do them a little more like a tweak forward, but it's true that they generally set me up really nice for the rotation. Yeah, so Benoit, again, yeah, that's what I like to do when I'm really powered up. And again, I'm more comfortable with wind from the left, so not really the Maui conditions for the tabletop forwards. But you get in this kind of lock position, and one of the tricks with the tabletop forwards, and I like to do them kind of like Julien Taboulé style, is you just really, really sheet out. And it's so important that you're really sheeting out and holding the sail in this position before you're ready to rotate. And so you're really forcefully sheeting out. You're kicking the legs into the tweak, and you're really, really sheeting out. And then when you're ready to rotate, that's when you pull in and just go for it. But really exaggerating that sheet out really helps with the control. All right, Axel says aerials for beginners. Yes. Sounds good. All right, team, I'm going to sign off. I want you guys to have a good windy week. If it's not windy, wherever you are, watch some windsurfing. There's some great windsurfing on YouTube. Mario is saying controlled jumps. I'm adding that to the list. There's some great windsurfing on YouTube. I want to put together a playlist. This is maybe something I can do this week. Just a little playlist. So if you can't sail, spend an hour watching some windsurfing. It's so important for your brain. And you can get better. You can get better just watching videos rather than, you don't need the time on the water, but getting your brain thinking about it. So if you can't sail, I'll post something for you to watch in the group. All right, everyone. Take care. Have a good week. Again, I'm going to be sailing, so if you want something filmed that we can do for coaching, let me know. I've got some great things to work on. Take care, and I'll see you in the Facebook group and next Sunday for the live stream. All right, everyone.